Welcome to the Light Dump, everyone. Today I have someone very special for you. She's been in my life for a long time, as you'll find out. Wendy Brown is a storyteller, a traveling grandmother, an author, and someone who has always followed her dreams, something many of us would never really dare to do. She has a lot to offer, and I think you'll take away some wisdom there too. Enjoy. Darling, Wendy Brown. My darling. My other mother, I've always called you.
Oh, lovely.
Sweetheart, you are, I was writing down this morning, how would I describe you? And this is what I came up with, okay? Wendy Brown is an adventurer, writer, author, and an elder in the role as a grandmother.
Perfect.
Is that perfect for you?
Perfect for me. That's exactly who I am.
So, isn't it funny? I grew up kind of always being told never to ask anyone their age, right? and here I am with my darling other mother saying, "How old are you now?"
In about 10 days' time, I'll be 86 years of age.
Wow,
Feels good.
go you.
It feels wonderful.
Is that unusual for people to accept? When you're out there in the world and talking.
Oh, yes, because generally, if somebody asks me how I am, I tell them the truth. Wonderful. And that response elicits an unusual response. Their response is unusual because it's like they don't believe me. People don't believe me, but I do feel wonderful. I want to feel wonderful, so I do feel wonderful.
And that's you. And you're someone who's always said to me, follow your dreams.
That's right, because I did, and it's worked. That's exactly what I did. I dared to follow my dream. I was maybe 49 years of age with a wonderful job that I absolutely loved and was paid hugely well to do. But I had a dream and it was really exciting and I couldn't resist following it. And so I did. And because I followed that dream, I I resigned my career. I left my career. I've never worked for anything but love since. Never earned a, yes, I did. I wrote a column for Next magazine for a couple of years. And I may have received not much for that, but that's the only time I've been paid in money. I've only worked for love. And that's been even more exciting than working for money.
And it's quite different for a woman. I mean, I met you around that time. I think you were in your last year of the big corporate job, and I moved in, I remember, and then you were off to at that stage to do one last corporate kind of appearance, and then go to Hopi.
It was going to be my last corporate appearance. I flew off to New York to go to head office. And after I'd had this strange and wonderful dream, and then before I left, I spoke to my wonderful boss. I had a wonderful boss who really understood me. And he said to me, why don't you follow that dream? Stay over for a couple of weeks after you've done your work. And I had appointments in New York and I had appointments in LA. So that's exactly what I did. I followed my dream.
And what happened?
Well, I'd have to go back to what happened with the dream itself. A word was screeched out of the night as I lay asleep in my Ponsonby house. You were probably in the other room.
Probably.
And that word was Sedona. And I heard it as Sidona, and I wrote it down. At the time, I was filled with grief because my partner had recently died. And I'd been having some strange dreams and some strange things happening to me. So when this happened, I wrote the word down as Sidona. And I looked for what it meant. I was reading about Eastern philosophy at the time, still getting over the death of my partner. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a guru's name, Sedona. Maybe I'm supposed to go to India and visit this guru. And but I couldn't work out what the word was about, and I couldn't find the name of the guru called Sedona. But I'd been invited to go to a meditation out in Avondale to a home I'd never been to with a group of people I didn't know well. And I went straight from the office, so I'm in a suit and carrying a briefcase. I walk into the house in the Avondale suburbs, and another woman in a suit was saw me come in the door and walked straight over to me. And she said to me, "You have to go to Sedona."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Where is he? I dreamt about him." And she said, "No, it's not a man. It's a place. It's a place in Arizona. It's the most remarkable place I've just come back from." And she brought a photograph of all times. She had a photograph with her of this magnificent Red Rock Valley.
Because we didn't have phones back then, did
We
we?
didn't have phones that back then. So she insisted. She said she was a clairvoyant. She was a businesswoman, but she was also a clairvoyant. And she said, "I know you have to go to Sedona." So that was the dream. Then the journey, the business journey to the States. And then I was taken by a friend to Sedona after I'd finished my work for WeightWatchers. I worked for WeightWatchers International and the New Zealand organization and for the New Zealand franchise. So I drove to the Sedona with my friend, and that was remarkable, a remarkably wonderful place, very, very nanu nanu, lots of strange and wonderful things going on there, and it supposedly uh, every second hill in Sedona is a power place. So I was learning about these things. I didn't know much about these things. So it was the July 4th long weekend. So I had a weekend with my friend and a remarkably wonderful time. But as I left Sedona and drove up Oak Creek Canyon, a very windy, steep road that goes up to the city of Flagstaff, I felt really upset. I felt tears in my eyes because I felt I'd had a wonderful time, but I hadn't found what I'd come for. And my companion said to me, "Maybe it's like a treasure hunt, Wendy, and this is just the first clue."
Mm.
So I went back to LA and flew to San Francisco to visit my American family for the first time. I was staying with an elderly aunt, cousin aunt, and her elderly husband in a very posh house in somewhere in San Francisco,
Mm.
Oakland. And in their beautiful bed in their guest room, I had another dream. I woke up with this sort of chanting going on and a picture that went with it. And I saw what I assumed were Native American Indians in a row. I saw every detail, the little kilts they wore, the little bells around their ankles, the clacking sound. I could hear the sound. I could hear the chanting of these men as they moved very slowly upward and downward. I could see dust at their feet. And I could constantly hear this wonderful chant. And I woke up with the word coming out of my mouth. I kept saying, Hopi, Hopi, Hopi. And this almost ecstatic feeling as I woke up in my
Wow.
bed in my cousin's house. Now, had learned recently that the Hopi were an Indian tribe, a Native American tribe that lived up in the desert lands. So I thought, I've got to go back. I mean, near Sedona. So I had another friend that was free, and I knew I would have to hire a car. I don't drive a car. And I asked her, "If I pay for your trip back to Sedona and I pay for the hire of the car and I pay for everything else, will you be the driver of the car and take me up to wherever the Hopi Indians are?" And she
Mm.
agreed. Well, there was a long story getting her actually to do it, but I did go up to the Hopi Indians. I was taken by a young man who had, in the restaurant we dined every day.
That's right.
I,
I remember that.
yeah, there
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
waitress that I told why I was there. I'd had this dream about Sedona and come back to Sedona and then had the dream about Hopi. And she said, "Oh, I've got someone that could be interested." And he actually came out of the kitchen. He was the fast order cook called Armando. And really, he wanted to know about my son because the waitress had seen photographs that were pretty unusual of my son, who's now living in the Golden Triangle, betrothed to a tribal woman. And so the young man, who is the same age as my son, first of all asked to see the photographs of Nick, showed him the photographs, and then he said, "Why are you here?" So I told him the story about the first dream and the second dream and the dream about the Hopi Indians. And he said, "I have to take you. I'm going to take you to my grandmother friend in Hopi land," which sounded like the faraway tree, the land at the top of the faraway, Hopi land. And he did. And we drove endless miles across. I couldn't even describe how new this vision was for me. These endless desert, all sort of rock, sand, and the colors of the desert were incredible. Not a green thing in sight. So he stopped on the way at a little sort of odd petrol station. There was nothing, but I could see these mountains in the distance with a flat top. We were driving towards them. So as we drove, he stopped at a petrol station and I heard him ask if there were any dancers on at the moment. And I have no idea what a dance was or that we were going to a dance. And he was directed to take me to a village which was called New Oribe. So we drove to this village and we parked where a whole lot of other utes were parked. And as I got out of the car, I heard the same sound that I'd heard in my dream. Like, oh, a really guttural chanting. And as we walked down the hill to this sort of plaza, I saw exactly what I'd seen in my dream. I saw a row of Native Americans, men, dancing, shuffling up and down, dust around their feet because it was all dust and dirt and rock, nothing else. And I saw they had these little kilts on. I saw and heard the clacking of the actually turtle shells, I found out later, the clacking and bells. I heard the sound. And he took me down to stand in the shadows of one of these, they're like adobe homes, very, very old looking places, standing in the shadow with him and my friend Mary, who had been my driver. I could clearly feel that we weren't welcome. This was something very private going on. So we excused ourselves and left. And he took me next to a village at the top, which I could not believe I was there. It's the oldest village, continually occupied village in the Americas, called Oribe. I've been to New Oribe. There's a whole story as the old Oribe is the original mother village of the Hopi. So we drove up to a cinder block house. I thought this was very odd. This is the oldest village in America. And into the house of he took me to the house of a woman called Treva. She welcomed me as though she was expecting me when he told her I was from New Zealand, and she asked if I was Maori, and she pronounced it beautifully. I later found out why. But in the 4 hours I was up there, I can't tell you exactly what happened. I saw the making of an adolescent girl, her granddaughter, would have been about 12, making, it was like a rite of passage. They were both dressed in their traditional costumes, and I was allowed to sit outside this hut with a fire burning, and I saw the grandmother teach the granddaughter how to make the piki bread. We returned to her house. It was time to leave. The sun was about to set. Well, the sun was going down. He wanted to drive out of the desert before the sun went down. He and Trevor had a conversation. I heard her say, take grandmother, because she introduced me to her sister who lived next door as grandmother from New Zealand. Take grandmother down. I didn't hear what, and he looked a bit surprised. So in the fading light, we walked down through the village and out the back of the village to the edge of the cliff. Now, this is like, I don't know, 800 feet to 1,000-foot cliff.
Wow.
I am terrified of heights.
That's right.
Terrified of heights. He's taking me somewhere special. He's never been asked to take any palangi, it's like Pakeha person, to this place. This is a place where the Hopi make their prayers to the sun, Dawa.
Oh.
And he said to me, you've been sent down here to make a wish. Trevor wants you to make a wish on from their sacred place. So that required that I walk along a path that was about 1 foot from the edge of this towering cliff. I'm shaking. I'm frozen. My heart is beating. He won't stop. He's got my hand by now and he's leading me. He never left holding my hand, made me stand in this spot. As the sun was going down, he said, quickly, Wendy, make a prayer, make a wish to Dawa. That's grandfather's son. And I couldn't think of what to say. I couldn't think of a wish. My mind went completely blank. And I looked at this horizon, which was like, it's the biggest piece of the earth I'd ever seen. And it seemed like 1,000,000 miles away with this horizon. And I said to Armando, I've never seen anything like this. How far is that horizon? And he said, when you got to that, you'll get another bit that big, and then there'll be another bit that big. And so it goes on. So I'm still trying to find, shaking, my knees shaking, my heart beating. I'm trying to find a wish. And I thought, my life is just like that horizon. I never go beyond the horizon to see what's there. So my wish came to me, and I said to me, I said to Dawa, absolutely believed in that moment what I was saying. I want to be all that I can be. I want to reach my potential and walk back. So I leave grandmother Treva and I leave the desert and I fly back to LA, fly back to my job, fly back to
me,
fly back to you. You're going to be waiting for me at the other end of the airport. But in the airport, I went into the station. I love paper. I still love paper and pens. So it sort of didn't surprise me that I wanted to buy this blue pad. It was the most beautiful blue airmail pad. And I bought a pen. I had pens. I bought a pen with a Mickey Mouse on it. And I put it into my briefcase and I boarded for my plane. I was going to Hawaii, where I was going to stay the night before I flew back to Auckland. I was traveling business class, as usual. So in the comfort of business class, when the light came on and I could put the little table down, I found myself reaching into my briefcase, which was beside me, and pulling out the blue pad and the pen, and I wrote my resignation. Or someone wrote it for me, and I felt this incredible lightness of being as I wrote it. Then I tucked it back in my briefcase and I flew on to Auckland, and there you were to meet me at the other end.
That's right. I was the
And
first.
as we were driving through Mangere, I said to you, Susie, guess what I've got in my briefcase? And you said, what? I said, my resignation. I'm leaving. I'm going to follow my dreams from now on. That's what I'm going to do.
Amazing.
And that's exactly what's happened.
It is what's happened. It's been such a journey, and I've been so blessed to be with you. I mean, I did boss my way in, I must admit.
You came for the weekend and stayed years.
Stayed years, I know.
Great pleasure.
There was
You brought a whole new life. I'd just been widowed, I suppose. We weren't actually wed as such, but we were more than married, and we'd only been together for 3 years. So this had been a devastating blow in my life. And I did go a bit strange. That's where grief took me. But it took me to the Hopi.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have never, ever regretted giving up a huge salary, a truly wonderful life, a very pampered and spoiled life. There was nothing I could have wanted, but I found even much more in what I've done since.
I know it's been a real blessing to you, to all of us, as I said. And the interesting thing was, as I remember, and it wasn't a conscious what do we do now? But it seemed to flow very easily for you after that.
Well, these clues. Well, what for a start off, when I resigned, I was a media personality. I mean, people knew who I was. I was the editor of a magazine, among other things. And because I managed to put my company on the map, and I was there to court the media, which I did very successfully. I had become I had quite a high profile. I often appeared in magazines, on radio, on television, talking about my company and the slimmer of the year, usually. So what happened is the New Zealand Herald rang me to see if I would be the Wednesday personality to talk about the shock of leaving my corporate career to follow a dream. So Bernadette Ray was the woman that a young woman that came to interview me. And she asked me in my interview what I was going to do. Well, I was still in a bit of shock about what I've done, but I wasn't about to go back. And I thought, what do I want to do? What is the most exciting thing I could think of doing? So I just made up what I'd love to do if I do it. I said, I want to swim with the dolphins. I'd never even thought about swimming with the dolphins, but I had recently read a book about swimming with the dolphins. I want to swim with the dolphins in Hawaii because I love Hawaii, and I spent a lot of time in Hawaii. And then I said, I want to go to the Whole of Life Expo in Los Angeles and meet all the people that are trying to save the earth. And Shirley MacLaine was going to be there, and I definitely had been so inspired by her life.
Yeah.
So, and then I said, then I want to go back to Sedona and up to the Hopi Indians. And this was published. And I remember saying, and I hope to meet interesting people on the way. Well, it was published, but she'd somewhat changed the story. I was looking to travel with interesting people, and my phone never stopped ringing from the moment the story came up. Can we come with you? As though I'd organized a tour. And I said, no, I'm not a tour leader. I'm not taking anyone with me. I'm off on my own journey to follow my dreams. But they wouldn't go away. 9 of them in the end, 8 people constantly phoned me. 2 of them turned up on my veranda, Auckland people. And I thought, I'm not going to get out of this.
No.
And so I organized a tour, which was, I didn't know anybody in the tourist industry. So I rang the only person, an old boy from when I was 16 that I knew had a tour company, and I rang him up. I said, Murray, I've got 9 people that want to come on a journey with me. I know where I want to go, but I don't know how to set it up. Can you set it up for me? And he said, what sort of journey? And I said, well, I want to go to some unusual places, like I want to swim with the dolphins in Hawaii. And he went, Jesus, Wendy, I do rugby tours.
Classic. I love it. I love it.
And I said, please help me. These people, there was one man and several women, want to go with me so much, and I now want to take them. And he said, okay, he agreed to do it. So I set up the first Wendy Brown adventure. To cut a story short, in Arizona, it was hugely successful. I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying it myself, and everybody else was too. We swam with the dolphins in the wild in Hawaii. I had this book about by a woman called Joan Ocean, who swam with the dolphins in the wild, where she lived in Hawaii. Had a phone number in it, so I phoned her. That was the first thing I did, and I said to her, I have a group of people that want to swim, including myself, that want to swim with the dolphins in the wild. Can you organize that? She said, of course I can. I'd love to host you. And she said, I'll do a workshop for you, and you can stay in this hotel and stay for 4 days. And it all fell into place. And so that everything fell into place. It was a wildly successful visit to the Whole of Life Expo. We were all excited about it. Then
Was Shirley MacLaine there?
Shirley MacLaine was there, and some very, very interesting and notable speakers. But what happened next was the strangest thing. We were flying to Flagstaff because I'd promised them Sedona and the Hopi Indians. I had arranged with Armando, had since left his job, since I'd left mine, he'd left his job. We'd kept in touch, this young dropout student, and said to him, can you take a group of us to the Hopi Indians? And he said, I'll see what I can do. So he was going to meet us at the airport. I said, hire a van, because he had this terrible old car that barely made it back from our trip to Hopi land. He hired the most terrible van I've ever seen. It had a window missing.
Oh,
It had
no.
black tape all over it.
Oh,
And I've got all these people expecting to be, and we were going to stay in pretty luxury accommodation in Sedona. Anyway, I phoned him and he said, put your winter woolies on because it's going to be snowing when you arrive. I think I'd only seen snow once in my life, and I'd never been in snow falling. So I said to the group, before we left LA, when we stop in Phoenix, please change into your warm clothes and your boots, because we're flying into snow on a tiny plane. We're going to fly from Phoenix, Arizona, to the little airport in Flagstaff. So I went into the toilet with a friend who I was sharing a room with, and I was in the toilet cubicle getting changed into your jumper that you'd lent me, the wonderful black one. I only like black and green.
I can't
And
remember.
it was had sort of stars on it.
Nice.
It was very appropriate. So I got into the jumper and I got into the boots. And before I did so, I was wearing one of these, they call them fanny packs over there, but like a little waist belt of the valuables. I took it off because I was changing, and I put it on the sandy bin. And I can remember tapping my head 3 times, something my father had taught me about memory. So I tapped my head 3 times. It didn't work because I left it on the sandy bin, because when I was getting dressed after using the toilet flushed itself. Now, this is 1991. 1990, I'd never heard of a self-flushing toilet.
Gave you a shock.
I just burst out of the door to find my friend who was waiting outside for me. She'd been and gone outside, and I ran outside, and I, "God, what do you think of the flushing toilets?" Took her arm and wandered off to get into our tiny plane waiting for us, the tiniest plane I've ever been in. And so there we all were, probably 20 of us in this plane, a whole lot of Americans dying to get home before the snow starts. And I go to buckle up my belt and realize I've left my belt bag in the toilet. It's the most terrible feeling. It had everything in it. In those days, it was traveler's checks, my credit card, my passport,
Oh.
my I don't know
Oh,
where I'm going, but other people have itineraries. But I'd ask them to leave them behind and turn it into an adventure.
oh God.
So I have to call out to the pilot who's in the same room as us, where it's a tiny little plane. Please stop. The propellers have started to go round. I've left my valuables behind. I have to go back into the airport. Well, I could feel the air of that plane, of these people that were so angry that they had to be stopped while I went, because I was silly. I wasn't an old woman, a silly woman left it. Police arrived to the plane to escort me. I mean, they're wearing guns. I'm not used to that either. One on either side, very serious. Madam, would you please follow us? But I didn't follow them. They walked on either side of me through that entire enormous airport with everybody looking at me, led by policeman to the police booth. And this is when another very strange thing happened, and I'll never understand it. But it made a huge difference to what was going to happen to me. So I'm on the other side of this, behind bars and windows. He's asking me about leaving the bag and when did I leave and what time was it and which booth and was there anybody in there? So I thought about it and I thought, yes, there was a woman, and I didn't notice because I remember thinking, oh, maybe she's Native American. She was an olive-skinned woman and she was cleaning the mirrors when I went out to meet my friend Joe. So I went to say that, and a voice in my head, my father's voice, said to me, don't tell them. She needs it more than you. So I didn't. I lied to the policeman because I would never have argued with my father. He was such a wise soul. He, anything he said I could do, I could trust it would be the perfect thing to do. So I obeyed my father's voice, which I heard in my head, and said, no, there was nobody in there. Eventually got on the plane, flew to Flagstaff, had the most amazing trip to Sedona.
So wait a minute. So obviously it hadn't been handed in or anything.
Nothing handed in.
No.
I'm empty of my valuables when we landed.
And your passport.
Yes, and I booked really, really luxury. You could get luxury. I wanted to stay well, and I wanted to stay a few days. I didn't want to be in a hurry, but I wanted things to happen. By this time, I realized things would happen, unusual things, because unusual things have been happening all the way. So I landed in the hotel with the assembled 8 people who were looking at me as I was crazy. I'm the tour leader that lost everything. And to cut a long story short, after we had been up to visit the Hopi grandmother and had a remarkable time, a remarkable experience, the next trip was to Las Vegas, because I put Las Vegas in there. Somebody had told me it was the happiest place they'd ever walked around in, that it was so filled with good cheer and happy people that you had to experience the energy of that. So I'd added Las Vegas as a last call for that reason. Most of the people I was traveling with were probably interested in things spiritual, and they liked the idea of being in happiness personified in Los Angeles. And fortunately, we were going from Flagstaff in a bus because I could no longer fly anywhere without a passport. And the Gulf War was happening. And for some reason or other, a passport was required. So we went off to Las Vegas. That was so splendid and so much fun. And we all experienced that joy that is in the streets and in the gambling casinos and in the hotels of Las Vegas. Palpable happiness. And I traveled back after seeing them off. I had to see them off in Las Vegas, not LA, and flying back with them. No, I waved goodbye at Las Vegas, feeling like a failure as a tour leader. And I got a ride back to Flagstaff. I went down to Sedona, made a call for a new an application on the phone to the consul, the New Zealand consul, and was there without any money, without anything, waiting for the passport. And Armando came down from Flagstaff to pick me up, and he said, I'll take you up to Grandmother Treva. She'd love to have you stay while you're waiting for your passport. So we drove once again up to Hopi land. I don't know how long I was up there, probably 6 weeks.
Mm.
When I got up there, there was no way to get down. It had a big shining path, like a new highway. And I thought there's bound to be buses.
No.
There was only one truck in the village, and that fortunately belonged to Treva. So eventually I got down and picked up my passport, came home with a vow to never, ever do another Wendy Brown adventure. This was the first and last, to find there were 10 people waiting on my phone for the next Wendy Brown adventure. And so that story in my life began.
That began. And
I took Wendy Brown adventures following my excitement, probably until 1994, when I changed from going to the Americas and doing interesting things. It really was visiting the wisdom keepers and the old people of the old races of the Pacific Rim. That became the attraction for everybody. And that's clearly what I was doing.
And you began to, I can't quite remember how this happened, and you'll be able to tell me that you began to let's just call it sticks and stones. You used to take sticks and stones to the Indigenous peoples wherever you went. And in fact, when I was living in London, and then I was going to Sedona with Lee, my husband, and you said, "Oh, good, you you can go up to Old Arabia, I think it was, yeah, and deliver something." And I cannot remember what it was, and I don't think
stick, stones, or bone or corn.
Yeah, it was something, and I didn't really look because I didn't feel like I should look. I just thought, okay, I'll be the delivery person of this, and
amazing.
And went up there too. Yeah, and had that beautiful experience probably you had on that very first time of the vastness of that place. And you did warn me, these very silent people. Yeah, and I want to say the word impassive, but it doesn't sound right for it because that's sort of they're just there's
centered
and slowness in the moment. Yeah.
Hopi means peace.
Yeah.
People of peace.
Yeah. And it's very tangible because here we are chatting, you and I, and we fill in lots of gaps with words. They don't.
No.
Yeah.
I spent many hours in silence while living with Treva. But there was something going on in the silence, and I realized that. I couldn't describe it. But how it happened that I began to become the sort of the messenger, I actually didn't know what was going on. But when I came down for probably all those weeks, I came back to New Zealand after living up with the Hopi, getting my passport back.
Yeah.
I was home one day and the phone rang. And a woman said to me, "Hello, Wendy. My name's Mariana Simmons. I'm from Pikitu Marae. What are you doing on Saturday?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Oh, no, what happened is the Māori newspaper that was then published came and interviewed me because I didn't know that the Hopi was something like, also, they were like a legendary race, the first people that were ever the first Native Americans of the Americas." And so this Māori woman read the story in the paper that had been done by a Māori man who came to interview me. And in that story, he said, "Where have you been?" And I said, I've been with real grandmothers, because I'd never met anybody like Treva and the women that I knew up there and the men and the whole society, and being called grandmother, and felt quite, I liked being called Grandmother Wendy more than Wendy Brown of WeightWatchers, which had been my title for 13 years. It's completely, that's who I was. That's who I'd become. But I liked this feeling of being Grandmother Wendy from New Zealand. Then Māori newspaper interviewed me, and the Māori woman rang me from the marae in Pikitu, which is near Pataru, and said, "I'm bringing you real grandmothers." So I agreed to be home on Saturday, and I remember they were very late. I wasn't pleased. I'm a sort of punctual person. If someone was going to be there around 11 o'clock, they arrived about 3 in the afternoon. 5 of them, including a 15-year-old. No, 4 of them, 3 grandmothers, recognizable aged grandmothers, as I was. I was in my 50s by now, and sat down at my kitchen table. And thereby lies another whole adventure, which is too long to recount at the moment. However, what happened is, because I was going to Hopi land, they gave me, and because I told them that it had been 4 years of drought, so they sent a rain cloak, a little rain cloak. One grandmother, Māori grandmother, sent it to the Hopi grandmother as a symbol to bring the rain. And that was the beginning of things that it's like every time I came home, there would be Auntie Harai from somewhere, or another marae, somebody from Whangarei marae from Rotorua. And I carried all sorts of things. I carried sticks and stones and bones, bone carvings. I carried a bone carving on a very mysterious journey that Cliff Curtis contacted me about. Why is he giving me, and only telling me this is to go to a newborn boy in Hopi land? There was corn. I took corn from the grandmothers here, Māori grandmothers, to the Hopi grandmothers, who sent their white corn, the mother corn, back. At the time, I was a prison auntie. I was part of a group that had been invited to visit the men in Paramarimu.
The prison.
I smuggled white Hopi corn into those men, and they grew it in their cells, which was an amazing thing. Each of the things they gave me had a story, but I honestly don't know what was happening. And as recently as a few weeks ago, this has all come back again, and the last thing I carried was a walking stick that's sitting here, the tokotoko, which has just come home after being overseas for 30 years in my possession. Until 14 years ago, 15 years ago, when I came home to live in New Zealand after being away for many, many years, this old stick, this tokotoko, which has a name called Rongamoraro, was first taken. They asked me to take it to Hopi land because they had carved an eel into it. And if Māori had trouble with the waterways, they would throw an eel down to clear them. And when I had told the Māori grandmothers about the drought, and they had no spring left at the top of the mesa because of a plague of caterpillars came in the 40s and climbed over that ancient village and swallowed it up and fell into the water source. So the grandmothers had to drive to the bottom of the mountain to another village and pay for water. There was no water. The grandmothers at Pikitu said, "Oh, not a problem. Put her on the phone. I'll tell her what she has to do." So I put the grandmothers on the phone from Pikitu Marae, grandmother Treva and grandmother Miriana, And I heard them talk, and I heard Mariana said, all you have to do is put an eel down, darling. Put an eel down. Clearly, at the other end, they don't know what an eel is. And she tells her, is no fresh water up here. There are no rivers. This is in the middle of the desert. This is the high desert lands of Arizona. We don't have fish and we don't have water. So I don't exactly know how Pikitu Marae grandmothers got in touch with a grandmother in Whangarei. And I was called up there and given in a ceremony this. I can remember, I didn't do it, but my eyes rolled back at carrying this huge, cumbersome object with me to the Hopi Indians. And they had carved an eel in it to take to the grandmothers to use in prayer to bring the rain. That was 30 years ago.
Did it work?
Yes, they got the rain. They got the rain. I can't remember when, but within a year, the rains came.
And it replenished the water.
That's the whole story, really. That is too long to tell. However, this old stick that had been it's been everywhere. To Tahiti, it's been to Vanuatu, it's been to Peru, it's been to Bolivia, it's been to Hawaii, it's been everywhere, even been to Patagonia, but just in the airport. I got diverted Patagonia on my way home from Peru, which was the Wendy Brown adventure I chose to do after Hopi Land, and thereby loves it. It's another whole tale. But I had decided on my journey to join my son and live in Thailand. So when I lived in Peru for 5 years, working as a humanitarian grandmother for the children of the street in the city of Cusco, all the time, the stick was with me. Then I flew, when I'd done what I needed to do for the children, I had a charitable trust called Intiwawa Kuna, the Children of the Sun. Intiwawa Kuna Wasi, the House of the Children of the Sun, because that's what we wanted to do. The young man from Denmark and I that took on this task to make the lives better of the children that lived on the street. I flew, when I'd finished my time there as a grandmother, the children called me Awella Trotamonda, traveling grandmother. So I went by that name. I took that on very happily. So I was still a traveling grandmother when I went to live on an island in Thailand to make a dream come true. I'd always still making my dreams come true. I always wanted to live on a tropical island. The stick came with me. Because of a set of circumstances, I worked for many, many years for children in very difficult, in orphanages and AIDS babies, being a grandmother, a visiting grandmother, for many, many years. But I had misunderstood and thought that I could get my pension, which would be easy to live on in Thailand. But when it came to that, I found I couldn't. And so it felt like I was forced home. On the other hand, it was the path of least resistance. So I needed to come home. A friend who's like a daughter, a Thai woman, said, please leave the toka toka with me. I want it for my altar and my mother's altar. So I left it with her and I said to her, it'll let you know when I wants to come home. So how many years have passed? 15 years have passed. I got a call last year from Pat, who said Toka Toka wants to come home. And so as recently as a week, we brought the Toka Toka come home. Just with me to say my goodbyes, because it was my constant companion. It was received over there. It's so important to Māori and the Māori family that the Māori woman from a woman called Vicky Rooker said she had to come home and escort me home with the toka, and I've just had that journey, just had a farewell ceremony in the island where I go back to every year, and just brought him home. And I had said to her, I need some time with the old stick because it was in my possession and my constant companion for so many years. So it's about to be returned to the treasure house of the Rooker whānau who live in Whangarei. Just happens to be here when you're interviewing me.
Why, yay.
Yeah.
It's
you see the eel?
Yes, I've been looking at
That's called carved. The woman that came over to collect me and the stick, her mother, who's now deceased, she died last year. She carved that eel in so beautifully.
So beautifully. What a special.
And it's all been polished up for its journey home, which is going to happen in the next few weeks. In fact, you might like to.
I might like to come to that. And when the two things I want to go back to. Treva said to you she knew of the Māori. How did she know of the Māori?
That was strange. She asked me if I was Māori, and I said no. No, I know I've often been mistaken for Māori, not just because I've always worn either pounamu. I've always worn a taonga for many, many years. I've had this one on for probably nearly 20, no, about 15 years. And before that, there was always something special and something Māori. Oh, so the old uncle had told them stories of Māori, and that when he was a young man, he had gone to New Zealand.
Oh, God.
They're runners. They don't have horses. They ran everywhere. So he must have run. I think the nearest coast would be Texas. I have a feeling. And he must have run to the edge of America and found a ship that took him up to the north of Maori to live with Maori. So they told the story how he'd come back with the stories of having lived with Maori.
Oh, that's so
And that's how they knew to pronounce the word Maori, because I didn't even pronounce it properly then. I didn't know how to say it. I probably said Maori.
As we did.
As we did.
Maori. Yeah.
But she said Maori with this beautiful sound. So she said to me, you will bring Maori. I think 2 trips later, a most wonderful Maori woman, a leader of her people called Maru Sterling, who died some years ago, became my mentor, my sister and my mentor. She came with me through a strange set of circumstances. It's been a life full of strange and wonderful, and I've been willing to accept the strangeness and see it as the next clue on my treasure hunt. I've been on an enormous treasure hunt. I feel as though I've just completed a circle coming home with this. And the return of this will complete that circle. And then there's something new for me to do as a grandmother. I found it difficult to come back after being in that traditional role, being given that traditional role by Māori grandmothers telling me who I am. Not surprised that on my last Wendy Brown adventure, I'd seen my fellow travellers off in Chile and gone back to help the children that had asked for help. And thus began another huge part of my life. As clearly as a grandmother, accepting that role because that's how they saw me. And I embraced that role because I realized I was in that role. So when I came home from Thailand, where I had a trust called the Bank of Dreams, and I visited children in orphanages all over Thailand, some of them regularly, taking young people from the island where I lived that are hugely interested in coming with me, making a family for kids had no family. kids who didn't even know where they were from. And a lot of them I could see because I was now familiar with the look of my grandchildren and the hill tribe people from the north in the mountains of Thailand and the Golden Triangle, where my son had married into a tribal people. So a lot of these children, when I started visiting orphanages, I could see had the features of Aka children, and I thought, there, but go for the grace of God, go my grandchild. Yeah, I just had the one grandchild at that stage. So when I came home, because there was no way I could stay under the circumstances, I had sold everything. I had given away a house and sold 2 houses. I had sold and given away my art collection, my wonderful wardrobe of executive clothes, appearance clothes. My company paid for all of it. I didn't have anything really left. When I came home to New Zealand, because they weren't going to pay my pension, the government gave me 2 years to finish my children's project, and then another 2 years where I would get my pension if I came and stayed for 6 months.
Right.
It was just too hard, and that's what brought me home, the path of least resistance. It was clearly meant to come home, even though I didn't want to come home.
Lucky for us.
Didn't want to come home to live at all. Thought my life was forever in Thailand near my son. However, it's probably been one of the best things I've ever done in my life to come home.
It's been beautiful for us. And
And it's
yes.
been beautiful for me. And it still is beautiful for me. So you asked me how I feel about to enter my 87th year. Someone asked me recently, and I said something, I thought, I can never say that out loud, because I thought about the response to her. And this is what I thought. I felt smugly satisfied.
I love that.
With my life. I felt smugly satisfied, as though if I had anything to do, I'd done it. That if there is a purpose that we all have, I'd fulfilled it.
Oh, love that.
And that,
Love
it's
that.
like I ask to be all that I can be. I ask to reach my full potential. And perhaps this feeling goes with that. And perhaps I have been all that I can be. I don't know that I can say it, but I can feel it. So I sit here on the brink of my 87th year, feeling sort of pretty overjoyed at the choices I've made and the life I've led and everything I've done, and feeling very, very satisfied and happy with everything that's happened in my life. The good, the bad, the otherwise. And there hasn't been anything bad. The death of my child, my son, was a terrible, wonderful thing. The death of my husband, another terrible, wonderful thing. Something terrible that actually turned into something wonderful. Things happened that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had that loss, especially with my son. So yeah, that's how it is now.
And one last little question. If you had to describe now what the role of a grandmother is, how would you describe that?
At this stage, for me to tell my stories, because there's something in them, in the story. I'm not a wise woman. I can't tell you how to do things or how to do life, but in my stories, there's a lot of good hints.
There's a lot of wisdom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can't call yourself wise, but I suspect I've reached a stage where I can share my experiences, and they could be very useful to others.
Beautiful. I love you, Wendy.
And I love you, Susie. And thank you for this.
And there'll probably be another one.
Well,
I hope so.
yes, the adventure hasn't stopped. In
No.
fact, it seems to, as I said, been revived. Not revived. It's a new story now that I'm embarking on. But I do feel I've got something to complete. And perhaps it is. In fact, it definitely is. From when I was a child, I wanted to be a storyteller. There was a man on the radio called Brian O'Brien. He was the Tusitala teller of tales on the radio all through my childhood. And I listened to him. Maybe it was every day, maybe it was once a week, but that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be him. I've always just wanted to tell my stories. I've been very shy about that, nervous, but I don't think I am anymore. I think it's time for me to tell my stories. So that's the new beginning.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you, darling.
My pleasure.